I said, you didn't report then? He goes, well, no, I didn't really think anything of it. And I said, well, you recorded it, right, on your thermal? And he goes, no, it was a hog or a bear. And I said, why did you not record it, Lee? And he said, because, we were talking about wildlife in this macro wildlife in this area, and we have feral hogs and bears, and I just assumed that's what it was. And I said, stop and think about it. We had 12 people surrounding the meadow. At least one of those people were upwind of that animal. What animal in its right mind would move across a huge 8-acre open area surrounded by humans? And he goes, oh, crap. And I said, exactly. I said, and what did Christy sense last night? He goes, something low and slinking along the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got to throw a caveat out there, and I would be remiss if I didn't.
Again,
and you don't just have to look at the Meadow Project. You can look at other instances of people's encounters with high strangeness, the Cash Landrum case, Dr. Gary Nolan's works, all kinds of stuff. This stuff is dangerous. Okay, and I'm not kidding it. I'm not trying to blow a bunch of sunshine up anybody's posterior.
Yeah, no.
This is dangerous stuff. And of the 4 people that went into the portal that night, the 17th of February, 2017, only 2 are still alive. And one of them has some really weird health issues going on right now. That would be me. That my doctors can't explain. The person who filmed it, Kristen Payton, has nasal cancer. Tim Gillardin, one of the gentlemen that went into the portal, died of what we think was a pulmonary edema. And Bob Grumpy Wilson, who some people might know from the TV show Bigfoot is Real, really well known in the Bigfoot community, his cancer came back with a vengeance. And to kind of add another little part of that, one of Bob's last wishes was to be cremated and have his ashes spread. You want to take a guess where?
At the Meadow.
At the Meadow. And his urn, fittingly, was a simple black cube. And it's still an ongoing project.
Yeah.
And one thing that makes it so intriguing, and now I'm gonna jump both feet firmly in the land of woo. So everybody stand by, put on your seatbelt. Is we're dealing with NHI, non-human intelligences, and that's very evident. If anybody has seen the film, it's pretty evident exactly what we're dealing with there. And the really crazy thing is the phenomena evolves. The experiences we were having back in 2016 and 2017 are not the experiences we're having in 2025 and 2023 and 2024. They're very much different. It's almost like we have established a rapport with the phenomena. And as it becomes more comfortable with us and we with it, it pulls different kind of tricks out of its bag. Some of them, are kind of cool and kind of interesting. And some of them are scary as crap. I'm not going to lie to you. So, and it's what the crazy thing is some of the ones that are kind of scary, you can go right back and look at the, some of the antidotes from the NIDS team, National Institute for Discovery Science, the Bigelow team, working under contract for DIA. Some of the stuff they experienced is the stuff we're experiencing. Some of the weird, more esoteric stuff. So, I'm that guy. A lot of people would say, I'm done, I'm out of here. But I just have this urge to, unravel the onion, to peel back the rose, to peer at the mystery that's in the very center of it. The return to the meadow. Let's see. Let me look at my notes here, because I can get the two things kind of confused sometimes. probably the strangest thing would have been some of our God helmet session. That's in the second book. Oh, let me think. Now I take that back. I think I finished writing the book before the God helmet session. So that's the craziest thing that's happened since the end of the first book. Yeah. And if you want me to elaborate, I can kind of go into that.
Go for it.
Yeah. The God helmet was a device developed by Dr. Michael Persinger and Stanley Coren at L'Oreal University in the 80s. And the idea behind this thing was to stimulate different parts of the brain to create religious and mystical experiences. Their hypothesis was that, like a lot of people that are very biological and mechanical based scientists think that our sense of self, our awareness, our consciousness comes from inside of this gray thing in our skull called our brain. So they were wondering if they could stimulate certain parts of the brain to generate internal mystic experiences. Is that where, visions of God come from inside the brain? I happen to believe it comes from the outside, but that's neither here nor there. So what they found out is when they would stimulate this part of the brain, people would have, some people would have visions. Some people would just be in a very comfortable theta state. Some people would actually feel a presence, like something or someone was standing behind them. Some people would experience all of this. And so I was able to obtain a God helmet, and somewhere here. I just had it up north at a conference in Wisconsin. I packed it away somewhere, but ours is field deployable. Where Dr. Persinger had this big soundproof booth, and he actually had a literal motorcycle helmet. Ours is a flexible skull cap. It can run off of a very small battery pack with an inverter in a simple laptop, and I can take it anywhere. So what we've done is actually took the equipment to the Meadow and put people through God helmet experiences. And what we have found, and this is really wild, is you can have one person go through a session during an expedition, and it ramps up everybody's experience. It's almost like you're standing up, if anybody's out there in the military, there's a thing called a green star cluster, which is a type of flare that goes up and bursts to signal the start of an operation or something. It's like you pop a star cluster flare, and it goes off, and the phenomena goes, oh, wait, there's somebody over there. Let me go check them out. And if you happen to be standing in the area when they come to check you out, you might have some of the experience. So we took one of our team members, Sean, and like I said, this is in the documentary Helm and Lens, and did this session with him. And he had vivid visions of going through symmetrical hallways and beings around him and geometrical shapes and all of these things going on. What we did is we took a few seconds of that footage of him sitting there, and this was done during when we were filming the documentary, of him sitting there in the chair. We sent it off to Stephen Leah, who some people might remember from Blind Frog Ranch and Skinwalker Ranch at Hidden Worlds Quantum Imagery. And Stephen started pulling data out of it, out of the lattice, the quantum lattice of this imagery. And he goes, what's happening to the left side of this guy's head? Now, Stephen had no idea what we were doing. He was just given some imagery. And it's like we're actually pumping electromagnetic energy into his left amygdala. And he said something's like there's like a toroidal field in his head, and stuff is coming out the right side. And he goes, and I pull up on the right side, and he goes, and for some reason, I am seeing cubes or boxes with faces in them. And strangely enough, right over Sean's right shoulder was the trail that led to the Meadow, where back in 2017 we saw the cube, which turned out to be, we think, a portal, and that's just a label, a portal, a threshold into something else. Let's say that. And so Stephen was able to pull all of this data out of it. And I also sent some imagery off to another analyst. And he started pulling data out of if you saw the film, there's a section where we had like this creature slinking along. And he was looking at that data. And he said, why am I seeing a vertical structure or a vertical line of demarcation to the right of that creature on your thermal. And I said, that's because in 2017, that was where the cube was. And it occurred. It's still there. It never left. So what we found out is with all these, what Stephen calls the cranio-malfacial constructs, faces, if you will, that these things, these entities, these non-human intelligences are around us all the time. They're cubes.
Now, with that said, and there's a reason why I'm asking this, did you experience the humming sound, the bee sound?
We have experienced at the Meadow, and I've been at both sites. I've been at Clearview Ranch and I've been at the Meadow. We will hear sometimes kind of a very low, it's almost, you almost can't hear it. Okay. It's almost more like a feeling than something you hear, if that makes any kind of sense. Something else we've heard, and this is, this is known, is clicking sounds, like a mechanical click, like a giant, really more like a giant watch than a clock, like a chick, chick, chick. So yeah, we've heard the buzzing sounds, and I did go, when I was at Clearview Ranch, I did go to the site where the cube was, or box was, there in Colorado. And I will tell you, that place has a very weird feel about it, because I actually walked up to the tree where the thing was, and it's like it's like the air was energized, if that makes any kind of sense. I'm kind of using, very poor adjectives because the language just doesn't really do it justice, but it felt, the environment felt tight, if that makes sense, and
yeah, it does. So let me tell you, there's one instance, and this is why I'm kind of going down the rabbit hole with the bee sound lately. There was only one instance that I know of recently where I have heard about or read about somebody else experiencing the bee sound that was not related to a necessary, like, case we were calling high strangeness at the time. And this is somebody who described a possessioning, human possessioning. The house that this subject lived at was experiencing the sound of bees buzzing in the walls during the oppression point of the possession. And so that kind of triggered me. I was like, wait a minute. So now we've got bees buzzing in high strangeness areas. We've got bees buzzing in an area where reported possession happened. So there's a connection with the bee thing going on all of a sudden.
right there, because I'm getting ready to twist your mind really bad.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. Is look into, you're talking about hearing the buzzing. Look into something called the Frey effect, Frey effect. And the Frey effect happens when people are exposed to microwave energy, okay, like directed energy, like the Havana device, Havana syndrome. And it causes a sensation, audio sensation of buzzing inside their head when there is no external source for that sound. It also can cause dizziness and nausea. Look at the symptoms that they were experiencing at Skinwalker Ranch. Nausea and other symptoms that look like symptoms of non-ionizing radiation, which is radio frequency waves up in the gigahertz range. So, all of this stuff just seems to come together, in a very weird way. But maybe our relationship with it, I was talking about the phenomena evolving, is some of the stuff that we experience is people actually being physically touched. Okay. And, when that started happening, Katie Page was with us. She's actually been to the meadow several times. It was one of her traveling companions had his hoodie pulled on his jacket. We had another female researcher. Her bottom was grabbed through the seat of her camp chair. We call it the Bohonkus incident. So that was the famous Bohonkus incident. And everybody thinks that's a place in South Carolina. No, the Bohonkus is, it's something different. But that the phenomena was evolving, and then we had more cases of I hate to sound weird, but mind speak, if you will. We have had 2 new members, and this was back in 2023, that had come down, and this was actually our psychotherapist and his wife. His wife knew nothing about the Meadow Project. All she knows is her husband got invited to go spend the weekend in the woods with some weird people, and he was all excited, so she went with him. Okay. And this is Shay and Christy Hudson, no relation to me. Even though Jimmy Church thinks he's my brother, I have to keep telling him Shay Hudson is not my brother, Jimmy. So anyway, so they went out with us, and I had put them with one of my top researchers, Daryl Neese. And the idea was Daryl and the 2 of them would sit up on top of the ridge, observe what was going on below while we were down below with our thermal and night vision. That model had worked very, very good before. And so they're sitting up there, and Christy, the wife, is getting uncomfortable. She's agitated, she's fidgety, and she said, hey, I'm not comfortable here. I keep getting this sensation that something is low and slinking around like Gollum, kind of creeping along. I'm really uncomfortable. And then Daryl goes, well, our goal is not for anybody to be uncomfortable, or fearful. And she goes, well, that's great. Can we go back with the rest of the group?
Yeah.
And, Daryl says, of course, absolutely. That's not a problem. So they start to go back to the east end of the meadow, and they're working across the top of the ridge, and we can see their headlamps moving along the ridge. Well, sitting next to me was a gentleman by the name of Greg Ogles, and I don't know if you know him from Relic Films. So Greg is sitting next to me, and he goes, Trey, look right below their headlights. There's an orb following them just out of their sight. And there's this orb tracking them. As they moved up here, it was moving along with them. So fast forward, we get back to the campsite. We have finished the evening, go back to the campsite, and Christy has a dream. And in this dream, she says that the top of their tent became translucent, and there's a woman and a boy standing there. And the next thing she knows, they're in a white room with a big whiteboard. And she sees these symbols on the whiteboard. And she falls back asleep, wake up, and tells her husband, and he goes, you need to tell Trey about this. These are the symbols that she saw in her dream. Now, what's interesting is she knew nothing of the Meadow Project. And she came and told me this, and I said, can you draw them? And she goes, well, yeah, sure. And she drew that. That's the actual drawing. And I said, Christy, do you have any knowledge of the significance of the spiral? And she goes, no, why? I said, in many cultures, especially here in North and Central America, the spiral is a shamanistic symbol used to denote a place that represents a gateway, doorway, or portal to somewhere else. It's very, very prominent in pictographs and petroglyphs. I said, what's also interesting is the second and third spirals you drew were squared off. And once again, I'll show people what that looks like. They're squared off. I said, the cube or portal that we saw obviously was in the shape of a square, with 90-degree angles. And of course, the third one she drew was basically the square spiral with an eye in the middle of it. So, okay. So remember, she saw something had an image of something slinking along. She had this vision of these spirals. The next night, we had gone out to the meadow, set up all of our apparatus, came back. Not a lot happened. And we're doing the after action review, the debrief.
Mm-hmm.
And Lee, one of my thermal operators, did anybody happen, their location? We're all going around. And Lee said, yeah, I saw this hog or bear.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, what? A hog or a bear? He goes, yeah, it moved across the meadow. I said, you didn't report? Then he goes, well, no, I didn't really think anything of it. And I said, well, you recorded it, right, on your thermal? And he goes, no, it was a hog or a bear. And I said, why did you not record it, Lee? And he said, because, we were talking about wildlife in this macro wildlife in this area, and we have feral hogs and bears, and I just assumed that's what it was. And I said, stop and think about it. We had 12 people surrounding the meadow. At least one of those people were upwind of that animal. What animal in its right mind would move across a huge 8-acre open area surrounded by humans? And he goes, oh, crap. And I said, exactly. I said, and what did Christy sense last night? He goes, something low and slinking along the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really weird is you fast forward to November of 2025, or 2024 rather, is when we were filming the documentary, and this is in the documentary, we filmed a creature kind of in that same area, slinking along low to the ground. You go back to the NIDS experience at Skinwalker Ranch, one of the things they experienced was a portal opening up and a creature coming out, slinking along low to the ground. Well, since we have talked about Skinwalker Ranch, one of the things that is talked about in the book number 2, Skinwalkers of the Pentagon,
Mm-hmm.
is after some of the NIDS people went back home, they had sightings of large canines
Mm-hmm.
in the backyard of their suburban homes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in March 28th of 2024, now this gets weird. Like this whole evening hasn't been weird. 40 yards from where I'm sitting right now this was seen in the back of my yard. That is a canine print. That is a 6-inch forensic scale, like you use at crime scenes. That print is 6 inches in diameter.
Jeez.
What makes it even stranger is the track line is bipedal.
Wow.
Exactly like happened to the Skinwalker Ranch investigators from the National Institute for Discovery Science. So there's these really cool, now you know why we call it the Skinwalker Ranch of the South, is there's these really amazing parallels that seem to happen in areas of high strangeness. Another really good example of that is Marley Woods. There were a lot of accounts of upright canines, also at Stardust Ranch and some other places. So, that's just a taste of some of the stuff that we've had going on, at the Meadow and in the Meadow Project, since the first book.
I've waited for so long to see when you come back to me. Through the wars and battles that were lost, we're born again, it's you and me. The rest is history. Past lives. Past lives. Did we dance together on different floors in 1500 or 1504? We must have been lovers, we must have been something in our